So hello everyone, thanks a lot for joining us today on Product Talks by Pragmatic Leaders. So today we have Sherika with us and she is going to share the lessons she has learned from failed startup products today. So let's begin. Sherika has already joined us, but before moving ahead, I would like to give you all a little brief about her. So Sherika has very interesting product journey so far. She has 9+ years of experience in product and project management. She has also worked with various brands like General Assembly, Imperture, and has converted various ideas into businesses. She has also co-founded a brand with the name Thomas and Winter, which was around specialization in customer research. And currently, she is working as a senior product manager at Universal Service Administrative Corporation. So let's start the session. And Sherika, I would like you to take the session forward from here.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen now. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to tell you a couple lessons learned from a failed product. Today, our agenda is as follows. I'm going to give you a summary of the product that we're going to be talking about, 3 harsh realities from this failed startup product, a couple of takeaways for your next product, and a couple of questions and answer sessions. I just want to give you a little bit about myself. Thank you, Priyush, for the small introduction, but just in case you're wondering, I have a undergrad degree in mechanical engineering with a master's in industrial design. I thought I was going to be an interior car designer, but that didn't work out in my favor. I've been doing product and project management for the last 11 years. I started my own R&D company with my partner in 2014, and we're working on our second product for Q4. So while I do work on product management every day, I'm going to talk about the product that I launched in 2015, the first product that my company, Thomas and Winter, actually launched. And so what problem were we looking to solve? We were sitting around thinking about, what are some things that young people may run into? And my partner came up with the idea or the thought that one of his friends was in a situation, let's call it that, where due to, I don't want to say a malfunction, but a sexual experience that resulted in the birth of his 2 children, where it wasn't planned. And so we looked at that problem and we said we wanted to develop a device that promotes safer sex practices while maintaining the fun and the experience. And so we went and we did some research with the CDC to see how many people would actually be suffering from this. We did interviews, we did some deeper analysis and about our competitor analysis and the market research and just everything that you learn in standard product management classes. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I can do this. Excuse me, I can do this. I do this at work. I follow all these steps at work, and I know that this process is tried and true. And so we went through and we developed an MVP, and the MVP was great. We said it really did what we wanted to do. We had a small user acceptance testing group where they proved that it did solve the problem that we had in hand. And then we went to launch. And I think this is where the problem went wrong. It's like, well, where did we go wrong? You followed all the steps, user research, you do design, you do development and or manufacturing, you do your marketing strategy, you do your business plan, and you get to market and you're like, then what? And so the majority of my presentation today is going to talk about the then what, the things that people did not tell me. And the things that I'm still trying to figure out on my own. And a lot of times when I teach classes for like General Assembly, it's one of those questions like, well, what do you do next? And so the first thing I want to talk about is we defined success, but we didn't define failure. Now, I like to tell people all the time, failure is always an option. It's something that doesn't make us feel good because you never think we're really going to fail. But some of the questions that we didn't answer were, when is it time to throw in the towel? when do you know that, hey, this is enough? If any of you are big on watching any entrepreneur shows or Shark Tanks of the world, it's like you have, the investors are like, why are you still doing this? What are your key, metrics to say, hey, we are missing this or we're not? And a lot of times I notice that a lot of startup companies, because of the emotional attachment, you really don't know when to throw in a towel. And so for a while, my partner and I were just like, well, maybe next quarter will be better. And then next quarter would get better, but then the quarter after that would kind of be stagnant. And then we got to the, if we're able to break even, then maybe that's okay. It's like, we're trying to find ways to rationalize how to keep this product in motion after the fact and while we're already emotionally attached. And then we got to the, well, maybe I can sell this, but will somebody buy it? And these things really haunted us for the first probably 12 to 14 months, where it was like, we don't really know the right answer or if there is even a wrong answer, but we know that we didn't do this in the beginning. Now, granted, I do want to say most of our well-known entrepreneurs and or companies, they experience failure in their first couple of products. And so I knew I was amongst good company. I just didn't know how to get out or to not be as stagnant. And so the next thing that we ran into was that no one tells you about customer acquisition as far as the cost and the time that it takes to get them. And so we figured that our target audience was somewhere between the ages of 18 and 35, males mostly. That's great. I know where to find those guys. They're on social media. They're at college campuses. They're at work. They're everywhere. So I don't have a problem with knowing where they are. But how much is it going to cost for me to actually get their attention? See, the issue is I don't really have any brand loyalty. I'm brand new. I'm just off the street. I'm really kind of banging the concrete at this point, trying to figure it out. And no one told me the cost that it takes to even get SEO optimization. No one told me the cost by which someone to manage my social media monthly. No one told me the cost for even just building product that you have to give away in order to get people's attention. You think, hey, I ordered, X amount for sales, and I'm going to sell all of these. But no, in some cases, you may have to give away 20% of your product before someone's going to pay you any mind or even to get to a distribution center. So no one told us about that. And so we did not plan for that per se, because we didn't realize how much it was going to take. And the whole concept of if you build it, they will come is completely false. We built it, but as I said before, we didn't have the brand loyalty. So we had to find the people. And it took us a while to figure out, how do you find someone who's in clear sight? Because I can say this, at least over here in the States, sexual conversations are still a little taboo. A lot of our TV shows may have sexual content, but the idea of talking about it in the form of information and or pleasure, it's not something we do quite often. And so trying to get in that conversation or even sparking that conversation to acquire customers is really hard. Another example I have with just customer acquisition is we had a client of ours purchase the product who actually worked for a really large distributor. He thought the product was amazing. And when he brought it to his distribution team, their first thing was, oh man, I don't know if we're ready to enter into this market. Even though we see that it's great, we see that this is definitely helpful to the age group that they're targeting, and we know that it works. We're not sure if we want to be the first ones to actually put it out there. And so that's a big issue that we were running into. And then the last issue that we kept running into is being a toddler sucks. So we figured out how to walk. We couldn't figure out how to run. If you think about kids, they're crawling, and you get really excited and they get up and then they start to wobble. And technically they gotta have to work on how to gain their own balance on their own. and they have to have some knowledge of how to walk, and they're watching other people and they're trying to figure that out. The problem that we ran into is that there weren't many people to watch. You know, when I would go online, and I would look up YouTube videos or look up how to, a lot of times I saw people speak about how they went from basically crawling to running. No one is talking about the rough piece of trying to figure out how to walk. And then the question of, once I get some attention, how do I keep it? You know, we weren't necessarily in a market that's well known, or a market by which has a lot of marketing around it. You know, as far as most people know, there are, you know, protection devices, which are, you know, condoms, and female and male condoms. And then there's the toy market. There's no real middle market for, you know, somewhere between education and, you know, fun. And so I didn't really have any idea of who to emulate as far as how to learn to walk and how do I keep your attention. So I was kind of stuck, and still in a way I'm stuck in this toddler world. And then the last thought that someone says to you is this: I'll just wait until I'm an established company. But when is that? You know, when are you really considered an established company? I thought about, in some cases, trying to get an investor, but I said to myself, well, what kind of sales are they really looking for? Will they understand that I'm trying to break into a brand new market? Will they see the value? Will they feel as if I haven't done enough? Where is this checklist that everyone is going off of that has figured out how to run, but nobody is sharing with me? Why is it that I can't figure out how to be a really big boy toddler? You know, I'm still in pre-K. I'm trying to move to kindergarten. And so we really struggle with a lot of these ideas, only because right now, product management, at least how we teach it, brings you to the MVP. It doesn't really focus and show you what's past MVP and what to do as far as the execution moving forward. So I sat back when I was contacted to do this webinar, and I was like, what are some of the takeaways that I am currently working on? Because I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I'm still in toddler stage. I walk a little bit better, but I'm still trying to figure it out, as well as trying to work on the second product and using the lessons that I've learned in order to make that one better. And so some of the takeaways that I worked on, or that I am working on right now, are: define failure. Do not necessarily be afraid to fail. Just because I define failure doesn't mean that I'm planning to fail. You know, a lot of times people say, well, you speak things into existence, or, you know, what you think about is what it becomes. And that's not it. It's more so knowing how to remove your emotions and when to make the right decisions. So, for example, if I could go back in time, I would say I'm going to define failure if, after contacting the top 50 distributors and the top 200 companies in the United States, without getting at least, you know, some sort of conversion rate or some sort of response rate by 35%, it is time to let this go. That would be the first thing that I would have done. Or, you know, if I am able to get 5 distribution deals, if I am unable to get a second order from 2 of the 5, then it's time to let this go. Being very specific. Another thing I may have considered as far as defining failure is, how fast do I sell out of my inventory? And or when have I hit my personal spend max? So as I mentioned before, I didn't have any investments. I was taking money out of my personal account. My partner and I were investing solely out of our personal gain into these products. And it was getting to the point that we're now entering into, you know, some interesting territory. As Mr. Wonderful would say, it's becoming a hobby because I'm not necessarily getting the money I want from it. And so it's, what is that number? What are you comfortable spending? You know, we ask ourselves that question when it comes to investments, whether it's stock market or just general investments. How much money are you willing to lose, and how, you know, aggressive do you want to be with it? We still need to make that definition known between yourself and your partner or any other part of your team, when is it too much to invest and how much are we willing to risk? Another thing that I would say is you need to understand your market. Not just understand your market from the aspect of I have this amount of market available to me, but understand the market as their behavior in purchase. And so what we ran into was when we launched, I saw another market was interested in some of the things we were doing, which I wasn't ready for. The women market, the women between the ages of 13 and 18 would send emails about, hey, I think this is a good idea. I'm looking to do these things. And the only thing that kept popping in my head was, are they talking to their parents? Is this legal? Can I even help them? And so you really have to understand your market and their behavior and whether or not this is something that they're willing to invest in, or at least let people know they're investing in. We've noticed that when we ship our product in a very discreet manner, not even mentioning the product's name, not having any sort of branding outside of a small logo, shipping it from the parent company address and name, people are way more comfortable receiving it. We had to really work on the packaging to ensure that it doesn't really lead you to think, there's something wrong with you, or your partner feels as if something has gone awry. We had to really dig into the emotional aspect of this with our users that we didn't consider in the beginning. And so after launch, it was really learning, oh wow, it's not that they don't necessarily want this product, it's there's still some taboo nature around this product. How do I get around that? I would say the second bullet point that was really, really important is you need to build and plan customer acquisition strategy before launch. The reason why I say before launch is because, as I said before, if your emotions get involved, you're willing to spend as much money as you have and borrow some in the name of believing in yourself. And so I was blessed to use my network to have someone close to me who was able to say, hey, Sherika, I will manage your social media account for $200 a month, and I will manage your SEO, at least the beginning, for $500 a month. That's $700 a month coming out of my pocket, which seems like a little bit amount in the grand scheme of things. But if you're in a startup mode and you're funding this off of your own money, you're saying to yourself, do I have $700? Do I have $8,400 a year, plus the cost of maintenance of the site, plus the cost of acquiring customers via giveaways, via signing up for trade shows, via just simply shipping and word of mouth? Can I afford it? Am I in a position to afford $15,000 annual towards customer acquisition? If you aren't, then you may want to consider and figure out how you go about doing that prior to the launch of your product. Also, the time that's needed. I think almost everyone nowadays under the age of, let's say, 40 has some form of social media. And my partner and I were like, yeah, we can manage social media. I manage my own social media account. It can't be that bad. I can manage Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we completely underestimated the amount of time and creativity that is needed to manage these type of web presences. When getting the consult from our social media manager, she said to me, I need you to be posting at least once a day and having at least 2 to 3 Insta stories a day on your account. And I was like, how am I supposed to do that while trying to manage this business, while teaching, while working a full-time job? What is going on? I can't do that. And she's like, yeah, but you also didn't plan for anyone else to do it either. And so there's a reason, and I've now learned to appreciate the expertise and the subject matter experts on these type of things, because the amount of time that it takes to do it is highly underrated. I was under the assumption that I could manage it myself, or between myself and my partner, we could split it up and divide it. But that was not even possible. And also, I just want to say, a lot of people who are in startups, you're not in a position to actually give up your full-time job. So we were working our full-time jobs 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then turning around from 6 p.m. to sometimes 1, 2 o'clock in the morning trying to run this business. And so knowing the value of time is very important as far as how you kind of learn from a failed startup. And also having a strategy in mind. So in many cases, if you're a solo entrepreneur, you're going to need some form of help. And the way that you strategize to get that help is important. I would say the one thing that I think is highly, highly underrated is the value of some sort of partnership. You will get way better balance of ideas, someone to throw things on, throw the things against, and they can tell you yes or no, and help you develop the strategy if you have that. A lot of times people are so concerned with kind of like whether or not someone's going to steal their design or their idea, and they want people to sign NDAs, and I was that way too. Like, if I talk to you, you have to sign an NDA. But I realized that I have to give some sort of trust to the people that I'm speaking to so that they can actually help me figure out this strategy prior to launch. Because I'm promising you, once you launch, it's all emotion, sadly. And you're just running off on adrenaline, and you really want success, and you're really not even going back and checking everything you need to. And then the other point I would say is a business plan is only a plan. Now, I know a lot of MBA students spend months working on business plans and business strategies and making sure that they're amazing and how they can kind of cross-check themselves. But I had a 60-page business plan. And once I went down a path that I did not even consider in the business plan, for example, the customer acquisition, it was just a plan. I forgot about reviewing my monthly KPIs, which is the key performance indices, or even, just general metrics that you should be reviewing. And most definitely, I did not find a mentor to show you the ropes with experience in this industry. It is just as of recent that I have found a mentor who I can speak to concerning the industry. I can't say that I want to be in the sexual health or adult industry without knowing someone who has some level of expertise in that industry. You're basically flying blind. And in some cases, you may have to pay for that service. But now that I actually have that information, I think that it was the biggest mistake that I did, or that we did from the beginning, was not seeking this level of guidance from the beginning. I mean, because we live in a day and age that they tell you, hey, anybody can be an entrepreneur. It's simply having an idea and moving it forward. And so many of us try it, and it's like, wow, I can crawl, but then I went to market and I have no idea what happens when I'm out there with the wolves, and how do I even survive? And so I wanted to spend just half the time kind of giving you a synopsis of some of the things I learned, but I felt like most of my value was going to lie in affording for you guys to ask questions, because I'm not sure where you are as far as if you are an entrepreneur, whether or not you're in a startup or a mom and pop place at work and you're experiencing some of these things. And so I wanted to take some time, at least the second half of this presentation, to just kind of answer some questions that you guys may have, and being able to have that dialogue. I'm very big on dialoguing with the guests that join my webinars or just my speaking events, because you guys got questions and I want to be able to answer them. So I'm going to stop sharing in a second, but I wanted to give you some contact information if you're ever looking to find me. I'm always one who wants to give back to, a crawling startup while I'm still wobbling to walk, and try to help you or share my network. So my email definitely is sherika.winter@gmail.com, and I will give this to Payush when he sends out the slides and the recording for this, and so that you guys can kind of contact me. But what are some of the questions that you guys have concerning startups and failed startups, and anything you want me to kind of elaborate on? So the question I have here is, can we start with building a product without much research? I would say no. When you say much research, what do you mean, Vishal? Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Are you saying you just kind of think that everyone has this idea and therefore you're going with it?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my question was, before launching any product, shall we do much research or we should launch a minimal viable product instead of doing a deep dive into the research and then see the outcome?
I would say every MVP needs to have some research attached to it, but I would say it depends on when you're going to look to launch. So every product has an ideal time to launch. So a lot of physical products, for example, will be good to launch around the holiday season or around some sort of event that it caters to. So let's say you have an idea right now and you're looking to get into the holiday season, which means you got about 6 weeks or so before everyone starts to buy up everything. If you're able to do 2 weeks of research, of hardcore research, before you kind of develop your MVP and put it out, I would say that's ideal. The only problem with developing an MVP without any research is basically saying that you know better than the customer. And I'm not sure if that's the message that you want to put out there, because you might just have an empty set as far as, man, I missed it altogether, and you don't want to go out there with the wrong foot. So if you're under a time crunch, I would say at least do 2 to 3 weeks of some hardcore research. But ideally, I took about a quarter, so 3 months of research and kind of validating prototypes, quantifying what it meant as success, and really interacting with my users. The next question comes from Joe, who says, in defining failure, do you use any specific type of approach, such as a stage gate or other? If so, where do you bring stakeholders in that process to gain feedback? So when I was looking to define failure, I took the same approach as I did when I defined success. I don't think it's any different than creating just key performance or key failure indices for what that is. So for example, where do you bring stakeholders into this process? After I launched my MVP, I allowed it to be out there for about 60 to 90 days. And I contacted my customers who ordered to say, hi, I just want to reach out to you to get some information on the product, whether you liked it or you didn't like it or you had any issues with it. And so I allowed for people to just have it for about 2 to 3 months. And in there, I was surprised how much feedback I got. One of the biggest things I got was, hey, your sizing is bad. I was like, wait, what? They were like, yeah, the size wasn't ideal for me, or I wish it were smaller, or do you have a bigger size, or because I just launched an MVP with one size. And so I was able to get a lot of my information after about 2 to 3 months of the product being out there. I also sent the product to a lot of Twitter and brand influencers. And so for the first 30 days, I really sent about 50 different products to different reviewers and asked that they published yes or no or something against the product to kind of get that initial feedback from someone who's in the industry. And then I went more to the customers that were buying from me over that 60 to 90 day period. Hopefully that answers your question, Joe. Shubhan, I think that's the right way you pronounce it. Can you share how to make monthly KPIs, general metrics, and how to calculate the cost of customer acquisition? How do you make monthly KPIs? That honestly is the biggest thing here. I would say you want to define what your goal is for this month, for this quarter, and then for 6 months. And when I say goal, I mean, are you looking to sell product? Are you looking to get brand, recognition, or are you looking to break even? And so I would set up the different branches of what you're trying to do and then create matrices around that. So for example, for us, one of the KPIs was to get a social media following of at least 400 followers in 60 days. And so I said to myself, okay, 400 followers in 60 days, under the impression that I need to post once a day with 3 stories, under the idea that it's going to cost me at least $200 a month. Okay, what else do I need? So in order to post something, I'm going to need images. Can I buy these images? Will I need a photographer? Yes, you need a photographer. You have to get a photographer and look into those type of costs. And so I would calculate the acquisition for the 400 users based on the cost of the photographer, the cost of the social media manager, the cost of upkeeping the website, and the time that it's going to take to get this done, and set that metric. And so for each idea I had, I did that same thing. In general, I tried to have 2 metrics per idea. So I had 2 for, let's say, getting the amount of followers I wanted up. I had 2 for how much inventory I wanted to sell. For example, I started off with 4 colors. I knew that the black and the blue were going to be the most popular colors. So I set certain metrics for black and blue, and different metrics for green and like a nude color. And so it's really breaking it down in that type of a tree and setting the metrics against that. Hopefully that helps. Manique says, I'm sorry, Vishal, were you going to say something? It said you were talking. Okay. Any pointers on how to go about shaping your vision into a product? Also, what about a product that requires a lot of ground operations, similar to aggregated startups like Uber and Oyo? How do you build and test MVPs in this case? Okay, so let's tackle the first question. Any pointers on how to go about shaping your vision into a product? Okay, let's say your vision, the first thing I would say is, many cases you have a vision of what you want to do, but you haven't necessarily defined what problem that is solving. And so if you can move your vision into a problem statement, that's the first step in getting this going. Because when you shape it into a problem statement, you realize that your vision has multiple ways to be solved. And so when you start to identify the multiple ways that you can solve this, things may get a little easier. So for example, we had a vision that this should be some sort of device that works well with condoms. And so I had to back out and say, well, what's the problem that I'm having? I'm saying, well, condoms are either slipping off, or people aren't using them, or they're using something else to keep them on. And so I was able to say, well, in that case, should I literally work with the Durex and the Trojans of the world to figure this out, to see if they would like some sort of adhesive? Or are they working on this already? Or can I just kind of say, hey guys, here's some information and this is a better condom for you? Or do I say that market is completely locked, maybe I need to be an add-on? And then I look at who's in the add-on space. And it's like, oh, there's hardly anyone here. And so that's where you would have to go into shaping your product into your vision into a product, is understanding the overall problem it's trying to solve and seeing if the different avenues by which you can solve that problem, and whether or not that problem is already being solved and where you fit into it. What about products that require a lot of ground operations? I would say those are similar. For example, if you're going to pop up another Uber, just for argument's sake, you're going to have to focus or take one path of focus before the other. You're either going to focus on the drivers and figure out how to actually get ops going because they are the driver for your money, or you're going to focus on the customer to say, if I can figure out what the customer is not getting right now, I can make myself different from the other ones that already exist. And you say, how do you build and test your MVP in that case? If you're entering a market like Uber, you would need to talk to your customers to see what are the must-haves that are already in the market right now. So for example, the ability to call a car within, I guess, a certain time frame, let's say 5 to 15 minutes. I've never waited more than 15 minutes for an Uber. That is probably a mandate. No one wants to wait any longer than that. But you know what might not be a mandate? The ability to add more than one credit card. So you may not need to tackle that right now. Another mandate may not be, for example, do I need to be able to split the fare? If you notice, Uber just added split fare maybe within the last year. It wasn't out for a while. And so you figure out what the must-haves are, and then you speak to your group to say, well, what aren't you getting? What is it that I don't have? And just kind of throwing things out there. One thing that Uber may be lacking right now is the ability to report, a drunk driver, or to report a drunk passenger, or to have that passenger check in to say, well, what's your emergency contact? If you pick up someone who may be under the influence of alcohol, maybe their profile says, here's the emergency contact. Please let them know you have this person and that you're going to drop them home. That's a safety piece that a lot of people might feel a little more comfortable riding Uber with. I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but those are the type of things that you would want to test in your MVP. Pick one or two random new things that you see here that is a problem to the current user base, and test one or two of those things on top of what they already say are the must-haves for that. Does that make sense, Monique? Hopefully. How do you identify the customers to interview for user research? The customers are going to come from the problem. Now, I would start within my own network. So this was really uncomfortable, but as an entrepreneur, you have to do it. I went to the guys that I know that were my friends and like, bros, listen, put our history aside. I need you to try something for me, and I'm going to give you a link, and you're going to be, anonymous, but I need to know your feedback. You got to do it within the next 30 days. And they're like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, start with the people in your network. And then from there, you're going to have to hit the ground. You're going to have to go out and get them. You're going to have to look online. You might have to look on the Curas, you might have to look on the Reddit, you may have to look on just general sites where people are talking about having this problem, and really just research and reaching out to them and saying, hey, I have something that I would like for you to try. You draft up an agreement, and you go from there. Another route that we took for customers to interview for research was make a connection with a store that might be selling your type of product, and ask them if you can hold like a session there, or at least interview some of their customers that are there and get some more information about that. The smaller stores are usually open to that because they have a relationship with their customers and they can help you kind of get in touch with people. But you got to start with the people you know. I would say, Vishal, how do you decide the MVP in terms of must-have features? I would say the must-have features are the things that people are saying they can't live without. I'm using this product and it has improved my life. This aspect of this product has improved my life for the better. That is a must-have. Think about, let's say you were going to think of a streaming app. At this point where we are with streaming, not allowing for playlists is not an option. You know what I mean? Like, everyone can have a playlist at this point. So you don't necessarily want to release an MVP that doesn't afford for playlists. But you may not need to include radio. People may say, hey, I'm driving in my car, or I can download iHeartRadio. I'm okay with you don't stream radio right now. And so it's really having a conversation. One exercise that you might want to do if you have a focus group going is lay out all the features that you can think of for your product and your competitor's product, and have them actually put them in musts, mez, and I don't even use this, I didn't know it existed. And so you can see with your different clientele or the people that you might be interviewing, their thoughts on it so that you don't have to kind of guess, but you can use some quantitative research to get at least an idea of this percentage of the features are actually being used. And then you can get the qualitative side to say, well, why is that? Or you don't use this feature, but what other thing you might have in your life is actually satisfying the problem that this feature was looking to solve. We have another question. To what extent will you attribute product market fit issues to failure? How do you go about identifying them? I will say this, there's this weird thing that happens where you can't figure out if your product is actually, or your user is actually using your product for the issue that you had it to solve. That might be a little confusing the way I said it. Let me try again. Is your user using your product to solve the problem you thought they were solving? And so therein lies the problem with the market fit, because you may believe that you fit into a certain market, but that market may not actually be using the products in there for the actual problem at hand. The best thing that comes to mind, and I tell people this all the time, my grandmother has an iPad, and I swore this lady was trying to bring herself up to the 21st century. I was like, man, I'm so happy my grandmother got an iPad. She's probably paying her bills and stuff off this thing. No, that wasn't it. She was using it as a camera. She said the screen is big. She can see what she's taking a picture of. All her friends had it. She bought it solely for the use of a camera. I'm pretty sure Apple did not account for a market by which the senior citizen world are buying iPads just for the camera. Not that they're against the sales, but that product was not meant to fit in that market. And so I think it's a matter of understanding the different markets that you can fit in. I think we're always told that we should fit into one market, and that probably attributes to failure. But given the world that we live in and how people really use things for their advantage, not necessarily following the instructions, because we don't even put instructions anymore, you might want to see 2 or 3 different markets that you might fit into. Now, if you fail in 2 of those, then listen, they just don't want your product. But identifying the markets that are best probably attribute to failure, because your first one is probably not the one that you belong in. How do you go about the cost of customer acquisition? That one is a hit or miss, to be honest with you. I learned more the more I realized I wasn't getting what I needed done. So I can say from my experience, customer acquisition is going to lie in the cost of advertising, the cost of marketing, which can be 2 different things depending on where you plan on going, the cost of material, so photographer and or sending out your product to be reviewed, the cost of maintenance, whether it's on a website, and the maintenance of that website, if you can do the development yourself versus having to have someone do that regularly for you. The cost of transaction, so sometimes that's separate. If you're using, let's say, a Shopify or a PayPal install, in some cases you have to pay for that. And so those are the ones that I have identified so far, but I haven't really seen a checklist that says these are all the things for customer acquisition. It's really going to be very specific to your market and your product. But I will say it's going to start mostly with advertising, marketing, and the social media needs underneath both of those, and getting the right content to disperse amongst the user group that you're looking at. How to approach your partnership with big institutions for whom you are building a product when you only have your concept note ready. I will say a lot of big institutions will not pay you any mind if you haven't at least developed what is seemingly a working prototype or your MVP. For example, when I was trying to get in contact with Planned Parenthood, one of the things they said to me was, "Did you finish your patent?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's in progress." They said, "Okay." And they said, well, did you finish, getting clinical trials or getting the trademark or, things of that nature? And I was like, no, not yet. And they were like, well, we can't really take on that liability for you. And so many of them are looking to see that you have laid the concrete and it's dried. And then once I did all of that, they came back and it was kind of like, well, do you have, you know, liability insurance? Are you taking that on yourself? And so it's like, well, I'm just an add-on to you. It's like, yeah, but I'm not going to take on the cost of your add-on. And so I would say you want to make sure that you dotted those I's and crossed those T's. Once you've done all of that, however, you want to put together some sort of marketing packet or brochure that speaks to how you're an add-on and how you can help this big institution. And once you put that together, I would not recommend just mailing it. I would recommend using your network again, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's someone that you know, to see if you can actually get it in the hands of a person and schedule some sort of meeting. Please keep in mind that if you have to fly, you're going to have to use that expense on your own, so you don't want to ask them to do that. But I would say I wouldn't approach a large company. Just in my experience, when I tried with Planned Parenthood and the distribution channels that I tried, they needed those I's to be dotted and those T's to be crossed. They needed my concrete to dry before they want to take me on, because they really don't want the liability, and they also want to show that I'm willing to do the work and I've done the work, and the only thing that they have to do is kind of join forces and figure out how to join forces versus kind of carrying the load for me, if that makes sense. I will tell you this, I am working on my second product now. We have only about 7 minutes left, and I am trying my best on customer acquisition. Like, that's my biggest thing that I'm really working on right now. Also, oh man, I want to make sure you guys do this. I don't want to leave this open. Your manufacturer or your developers. I was bitten when I made my product, where my manufacturing company went out of business and they took my mold, and I had to pay for another mold, and I didn't have any contract in place that said, hey, you owe me my mold, or let me know that you're going out of business so I can get my mold. So you want to make sure that whoever is developing or manufacturing for you, you have a contract that is tight, by which you can get your valuable things so that you don't have to start over. In addition, if you're doing a physical product, there are companies out there who do QA testing of the facility, the manufacturing facility, to make sure the quality is up to date, to make sure the standards are up to date, to make sure they're treating people correctly. That was a question that came to me when I went to a distributor, where he was just like, well, what's the state of your manufacturing? Have you run any sort of QA or quality assurance testing on your manufacturer? And I was like, actually, I did. And you're supposed to do it at least twice a year, just to make sure that you can hold the integrity of your company. So please don't forget that. It cost me a couple of $100s to have that company go in and look at their site and how they're doing things, and I found some things I didn't like, and so I sent it back to them, and I said, you have to update your process, you have to clean this up, you have to treat people a different way. I would prefer if everyone's wearing gloves and everyone's really dressed for a manufacturing facility. And they were able to change that, and I sent the company back to make sure that it was done correctly. Can you just share how to make good pitch decks and investor decks? The best thing I can say is there are two ways that I approach a deck or a pitch. One, I don't necessarily want it to go over 5 minutes. Most times I'm saying, how long am I going to be in an elevator with someone? And that sounds cliche, but people are really paying attention to you for 3 to 5 minutes. And you have to pick 2 routes. One, either you start with your MVP and say your product and what it is, and then back into how it helps the problem, or you want to call in your audience by having them relate to the problem and finding an example by which they can relate to, and they're like, you're absolutely right. That is something that I could use. So I would say take one of those approaches, either throw the problem at me and throw the problem at me so that I can relate to it and then get to the solution, or start with the solution and then back out the other way. In either event, you want to make sure you touch on where you are in the process, how much you've made or have not made and why, and what your next plan is for the quarter. Those are the three things that I realized that it's very important to them. They want to make sure you're looking forward, you understand and accept where you are right now, the accountability of where you are right now, and that you understand your problem and can properly articulate it. I don't like long decks either, as I said. 5 minutes, it should be okay, and let the rest of it be more of a dialogue. You want to be in a position of listening. You want to be in a position to answer questions correctly. You want them to be able to converse with you and be able to ask the right questions. Can you talk about a time when you manage a job or startup in parallel, and any tips on how to manage your time effectively? Oh, the three things, sorry. You want to talk about, give me 1 second, Monique, I'll get to that question. The three things that I mentioned is your problem, being able to articulate your problem clearly for them to understand that you understand your problem. Accountability for where you are now. You want to make sure they understand you know where you are. This is how much I've made. This is how much I've invested, and where you plan to go. So your 3 to 6 month plan. They want to make sure that you're thinking forward and that you have a plan of attack to address not only getting further in success, but some of the things that you mentioned, the risk and accountability about, I want to fix the following things. Can I talk about time management? Sure, it's what I do every single day. One of the biggest things that people kind of underrate is being able to kind of set up your schedule in a way that you're waking up and closing out the day at the same time every day for 7 days a week. Now that sounds insane, but for my life, I wake up every day between the hours of 6:45 and 7:30, every day. And that is because you need to get yourself into a routine. When you're managing your job and your startup, time is money. You have to be able to say, I'm going to work my job from these hours to these hours. I am going to be in transit, and then I'm going to work on my other job and move forward that way. So for me, as I said, by 7:30, I've looked at the remainder of the week's plans, what I have to do, what meetings I have to make, what after work plans I have, what open tasks are available, and I set the deadlines on all of those things. I'm a very results-driven person. I walk around with a black notebook that has everything in there. And you want to make sure that you make time for yourself. So Sundays are my days. They're booked. They're booked for me to do nothing, family time and or self time. And so it's just a matter of time management. I try not to spend more than 4 to 5 hours a day working on my product. I realized that my brain just maxes out if I'm doing an 8-hour workday and then a 4 to 5 hour workday on my startup. That helped me realize that that's when I knew I need help. If I'm unable to accomplish the task that I need to accomplish between myself and my partner from 4 to 5 hours a day, our team is too small. And that's really when I got to the social media help and the photography and the advertising help. So you want to set just parameters for yourself. What can you really manage? And you want to make sure that whatever you are juggling, you're still able to give it your 150%. And so while my email box is going off, I make sure that I don't actually get pinged for certain emails at a certain time. So this sounds kind of weird, but my job emails, once I leave work, I kind of turn off the ping. I can check them if I have time, but I don't want that distraction as I'm working on my startup, and vice versa. And so it's really just kind of disciplining yourself and having your body get set to that discipline. Should you share the 3 things I mentioned while doing a partnership as well? I think it depends on where you are in the partnership. I think it depends on how advanced your partner is. Are you partnering for your benefit, or are you partnering for their benefit? If you're partnering for your benefit, then yes, because you're jumping on someone who's a little further along the route. If you're partnering for their benefit, I would then really share how you believe that this is a mutual benefit. And if it's not a mutual benefit and you're just kind of doing it for the right way, I would leave for them to give you that information. And I would just simply share where we are right now and the problem. I probably wouldn't share the 3 to 6 months because it's not really helping you. You're trying to help them. But if they're really helping you, I would make sure you share it that way. Thank you so much for this opportunity. If you ever want me to come back again, I am so open. Hopefully this was helpful for those who participated. I wanted to give you as much information I can, but also answer as many questions I can. It's not really a science. It's kind of like, you got to work with it and be open to failing.
Yes, thanks a lot for joining us today. All the insights are very useful. And I hope every one of us have got answers to all our queries. And thanks a lot everyone for joining us today. Before ending this session, I would like to give you all a little brief about Pragmatic Leaders. So we started this organization with the objective of building a new generation product managers and train them for the jobs of future. So for this, we have built an immersive product management bootcamp, where along with the knowledge, you will build and ship a real product, being paired up with our in-house development team. Also, we have recently launched our 8 specialization courses in product management. So you can have a look at them. I'll share the link of our website in chat section. And also we have very interesting events lined up for this month, so you can go and check out on our website. And in case you have any queries related to product management, you can anytime reach out to Sherika, and you can also reach out to me if you are looking for a transition in product management. And once again, thanks a lot, Sherika, for joining us today.
Hopefully I hear from some of you soon. Have a great day and a great weekend.